They left her to die in the killer swamp until this Lakota warrior appeared. She trusted them because there had been no reason not to. When the trip began, it felt ordinary, almost boring in the way normal life is supposed to be. A few people traveling together, trying to save money, sharing jokes, sharing food, sharing the small stories people tell when they want to feel less alone. She was careful by nature, not reckless, but she believed that danger usually announced itself. She believed bad people looked bad. She believed trust was something that broke loudly, not quietly. She was wrong. The swamp was not on the original plan. That part came later, introduced casually, like an afterthought. One of them mentioned it as a shortcut. Another said it was beautiful, untouched, the kind of place tourists never see. Someone laughed and said locals exaggerated the danger. She hesitated, but hesitation in a group feels like weakness. No one argued, so neither did she. As the road narrowed and the trees thickened, her unease grew. The air changed first, heavy, wet, pressing against her skin. Then the smell followed, dark and rotting, like water that had been standing still for too long. The paved road disappeared, replaced by dirt and mud. Her phone signal faded until it vanished completely. She noticed things then. Small things. How the jokes stopped. How voices became shorter. How no one looked her in the eye anymore. When she asked how much farther it was, someone answered too quickly. When she asked if this was safe, someone laughed too loudly. The swamp appeared without warning. Water stretched in every direction, broken by twisted trees and thick plants rising from the surface like grasping hands. The ground was not solid. It shifted underfoot, sucking at shoes, pulling with quiet strength. Insects buzzed constantly, filling the air with a sound that made thinking difficult. Somewhere far away, something large moved through the water. She stopped walking. This wasn't right. She said so. Her voice sounded small, even to her own ears. She said, they should turn back. She said this place felt wrong. That was when everything changed. One of them turned slowly, eyes cold and unfamiliar. Another sighed, annoyed, like she was being inconvenient. Words were exchanged, sharp, fast, low. She caught pieces of it. Money, blame, a mistake, a problem. Her heart began to race. She tried to step back, but her foot sank deep into the mud. Panic flared. She asked what was happening. No one answered her directly. Someone grabbed her arm, not gently. She cried out, more in shock than pain. The moment stretched, thin and fragile, then snapped. She was pushed. She fell hard, her body striking something hidden beneath the water. Pain exploded through her side. The breath left her lungs in a sharp burst. She tried to stand, but the ground gave way beneath her again. Mud filled her hands, her mouth, her nose. They stood there watching. She begged them. Not loudly at first. She told them she wouldn't say anything. She told them they could still leave together. She told them she was hurt. Her words came out messy and rushed, tangled with fear. No one helped her. Someone muttered that it was too late. Someone else said this was better than the alternative. She didn't understand what they meant, but the way they said it made her blood run cold. Then they turned away. She screamed then. Not words, just sound. Raw and desperate. The swamp swallowed it easily. Trees blocked the view. Water carried the noise away. No one turned back. She lay there shaking, half submerged, watching their shapes disappear into the thick green distance. Each step they took felt unreal, like a nightmare she would wake from any second, but she didn't wake up. The pain in her side worsened as time passed. Every breath burned. She pressed her hand against herself and felt warmth, blood mixing with swamp water. Insects landed on her skin without fear. She tried to wave them away, but her arm felt weak and heavy. The sun began to sink. With it came new sounds. Louder insects, distant splashes, low calls from animals she could not see. The swamp seemed to wake up as daylight faded, like it had been waiting for this moment. Fear settled into her bones. She tried to stand again. Her legs trembled. The mud pulled at her shoes, refusing to let go. When she finally freed one foot, she lost her balance and fell back, sending pain through her body so strong she cried out again. No one answered. Her thoughts began to scatter. She thought of her family. She thought of small, unimportant arguments she wished she could undo. She thought of the moment she could have said no, could have turned back, could have trusted her fear instead of politeness. The air grew colder. Moisture clung to her clothes, making her shiver. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to keep what little warmth she had. Her phone was gone, lost somewhere in the fall. Even if she had it, there was no signal, no light, no help. The swamp closed in. Water crept higher as the ground shifted. Her body ached with exhaustion. Every sound felt closer now. Every ripple in the water sent panic racing through her mind. She imagined eyes watching her from the darkness. Teeth, movement just out of sight. She whispered prayers she hadn't spoken in years. Time lost meaning. Minutes stretched into hours. The sky darkened fully, stars barely visible through the thick canopy above. Her breathing became shallow. Fever began to rise, making her thoughts slow and heavy.
She understood then. They hadn't just left her.
They had decided she would not survive. This place was chosen because it finished people without witnesses. The swamp did not need to be told what to do. Her anger came last, quiet but fierce. Not loud like fear, not heavy like pain. It burned slowly inside her. She promised herself that if she lived, if somehow she lived, she would not let this disappear into silence. Her eyes drifted closed despite her effort to keep them open. Her body felt distant now, like it belonged to someone else. The sounds of the swamp blended together, rising and falling like waves. She did not know that far away, footsteps would soon break that rhythm. She did not know that someone who understood this land was moving through it, reading signs written in water and mud, guided by a code older than fear. All she knew was the darkness, the pain, and the belief that this was the end. Night did not fall all at once. It crept in slowly, like it was testing her strength before taking everything else. At first, she tried to stay alert. She told herself that if she kept her eyes open, if she listened carefully, she might hear people. A boat engine, voices. Anything that meant the world still remembered her. But the swamp had its own sounds, and they were constant. Buzzing, clicking, splashing. None of them meant help. Her body ached in a deep, exhausting way. The pain in her side throbbed with every breath, steady and unforgiving. She pressed her hand there again, hoping the warmth she felt would fade, hoping it was just fear playing tricks on her. It wasn't. She pulled her hand back and stared at it in the dim light, her vision blurring as tears filled her eyes. She told herself not to cry. Crying wasted energy. Energy was something she could not afford to lose. The ground beneath her shifted again, slow but certain. Water slid closer, soaking more of her clothes. The fabric clung to her skin heavy and cold. She tried to move to higher ground, dragging herself inch by inch, but the swamp resisted. Every movement cost her strength, and strength was slipping away fast. She rested her head back and stared upward. The trees blocked most of the sky, their branches tangled like they were locking her in. A few stars peeked through, distant and uncaring. She wondered if anyone else was looking at them at the same moment. She wondered if anyone was thinking of her. Her thoughts became messy. They jumped from one memory to another without warning. Her childhood home, the smell of clean laundry, a song she used to play on repeat, the sound of laughter from a different life, one that felt impossibly far away now. The swamp did not allow silence. Something moved in the water nearby. She froze, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure it could be heard. She held her breath, waiting. The movement passed, slow and heavy, then disappeared. She did not know what it was, and she did not want to know. Fear drained her faster than pain. She whispered to herself, reminding herself to stay awake. She counted her breaths. She counted seconds. Then she lost count and had to start again. Time stretched and twisted, no longer following rules. It felt endless and fast all at once. Her mouth was dry. Thirst burned her throat, but the water around her was not safe. She knew that much. Even in her fondy state, she knew drinking it would only make things worse. So she endured, licking cracked lips, swallowing nothing. Cold crept into her bones. Her teeth began to chatter, soft at first, then harder. She curled in on herself as much as she could, trying to protect what warmth remained. Her muscles shook from exhaustion, each tremor stealing more strength. At some point, she started hearing things. At first, it sounded like voices, low and distant. Her heart leaped, hope flashing bright and painful. She tried to call out, but her voice came out weak, barely louder than the insects around her. She called again, forcing the sound from deep inside her chest. No answer. The voices faded, replaced by the steady hum of the swamp. She realized then that her mind was filling the silence with things it wanted, not things that were real. That realization hurt more than the wound in her side. She felt very small. The swamp felt endless, like it stretched forever in every direction. She imagined herself sinking deeper as time passed, becoming part of it, forgotten. The thought terrified her. She wanted proof that she had existed, that her life mattered beyond this moment. She pressed her fingers into the mud, grounding herself. "I'm here," she whispered, even though no one could hear it. "I'm still here." Hours passed, or maybe minutes. She could no longer tell. Her fever rose, turning the world soft and unreal. The trees seemed to lean closer, their shapes bending. Shadows moved where nothing existed. Her thoughts slowed, thick and heavy. She drifted in and out of sleep. Each time she woke, panic hit her fresh. Where am I? What happened? Then the pain returned, sharp and clear, and memory followed close behind. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay present, afraid that if she slipped too far away, she would not come back. The water rose again. It reached her waist now, then higher. She shifted, lifting herself onto a patch of roots that jutted from the ground. They were slick and uneven, but they held. Barely. She felt something brush against her leg. She gasped, heart racing, pulling herself tighter against the roots. Nothing followed. Still, she did not relax. The swamp taught her quickly that stillness did not mean safety. Her strength faded in waves. One moment she felt clear enough to plan, to think about daylight and rescue. The next, she felt ready to let go, to stop fighting, to rest. That second feeling scared her more than anything else. She thought of promises she had made to herself long ago. To be strong. To survive hard things. To never let others decide her worth. She held on to those thoughts like a lifeline, repeating them silently. Dawn felt like a rumor before it became real. At first, the darkness softened. The black sky turned deep blue, then gray. The insects quieted slightly, their endless noise shifting into something less sharp. Birds began to call, distant but clear. She cried then, quiet tears slipping down her cheeks. Not from relief, not yet, but from the simple fact that she had made it through the night. Light revealed what darkness had hidden. The swamp looked even more dangerous in daylight. Water stretched far and wide. Thick plants blocked any clear path. There was no road, no sign, no hint of where she should go. Her body felt heavier than ever. Every movement sent pain through her side, down her legs, into her arms. Her hands shook uncontrollably. She knew she could not walk far. Not like this. She tried anyway. She pulled herself forward, using roots and branches, moving slowly, carefully. Each step felt like it might be her last. After only a short distance, her vision blurred again, dark spots dancing at the edges. She stopped, leaning against a tree, breathing hard. The swamp did not rush her. It waited. She slid back down, settling against the tree's base. Her head felt light, her thoughts scattered. She knew in a distant way that this was dangerous. Sitting still meant giving up ground. But her body no longer listened to her will. She closed her eyes for just a moment. Images filled her mind. Faces, voices, warm places. She felt herself drifting, the fight inside her growing weaker. The swamp's sounds softened, like a lullaby. Somewhere, far beyond her fading awareness, something was different. A sound that did not belong. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Not crashing or careless, but measured. Respectful of the land. The water shifted with intention, not panic. Branches moved without breaking. She did not hear it clearly. She only felt a change, subtle but real, like the swamp itself was holding its breath. She tried to open her eyes. They fluttered, heavy and unwilling. Her lips parted, a faint sound escaping. Barely a call, barely a breath. Then darkness took her again, deeper this time. The swamp had not finished deciding her fate. The first thing he noticed was the subtle disturbance in the water. A branch bent slightly under the weight of something unseen. Reeds were broken in a way that did not match the usual movement of animals. He moved closer, barefoot and steady, guided by instinct and years of knowing the land. Every step was deliberate. The swamp punished mistakes, and he knew it. He was a Lakota man, not lost, not careless. The swamp was alive to him in a way it was not to outsiders. He could read its signs as clearly as someone else might read a map. Broken twigs, footprints in mud, ripples in still water. Each told a story. And today the story was one of desperation. Someone was alive, barely, and needed help. The sunlight barely pierced the dense canopy above, and he adjusted his path to follow the signs without disturbing them further. The air was heavy and humid, filled with the sharp scent of wet earth and plants. Insects buzzed relentlessly, but he hardly noticed. His attention was on the soft noises, a groan, a weak splash, a rustle of movement too deliberate to be an animal. He found her partially submerged near a cluster of roots. She was small, almost hidden, her body pressed against the mud. Her clothes clung to her, wet and torn. Her hair stuck to her face. At first, he thought she might be gone, but then he saw her chest rise and fall, painfully slow but alive. He knelt carefully beside her, speaking in a low, calm voice. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe now." His words were not loud but steady, and for the first time in hours, she felt something familiar. A lifeline. Her eyes fluttered open, clouded with fear and fever. She tried to speak, but only a faint, broken sound escaped her lips. He reached out, offering water wrapped in leaves, but she shook her head. She could not drink yet. She could not even sit up. He worked quickly but carefully. He lifted her, supporting her fragile body, and began moving through the swamp. Every step was measured. Roots and mud tried to pull them down, but he kept going, guided by both instinct and an understanding of the swamp's hidden pathways. Her head rested against his shoulder. She tried to speak again, but all that came out was a whisper of panic. "They left me," she said, shaking. Her words were small but heavy with anger and disbelief. "They did," he replied gently, without judgment. "But that is past now. You are alive, and that is what matters." The journey was slow. Hours passed, though it was impossible to tell how many. Each step required immense effort from both of them. He had to pause often, allowing her body to adjust, allowing her strength to return, however little it might be. He moved silently, knowing that sound could startle the swamp's creatures or alert others to their presence. As they traveled, he checked her injuries. Cuts on her arms and legs were swollen and raw, mud and water clinging to them. Her side was worse. He applied pressure to slow the bleeding and wrapped it in a makeshift bandage. She shivered, not just from cold but from exhaustion and fear. He draped what little he had to shield her from the sun and insects. At one point she whispered a question, barely audible. "Who are you?" He paused, considering how much to reveal. He could have said little, but he chose honesty. for trust was necessary now. "I am someone who knows the land," he said. "That is enough." She nodded, eyes closing briefly as she fought to regain her strength. The swamp continued to test them. Hidden holes in the mud tried to trap them. Branches swung down from above as if to strike. The air was thick with the sound of insects and distant animals, constant reminders that this place could be cruel. Hours, or perhaps days, passed this way. Time had lost meaning for her, and even for him. It was measured only by distance and progress. He taught her to move carefully, guiding her hands and feet, showing how to use roots and branches for balance. Slowly, painfully, she began to trust her body again. The first night with him was different from the one she had spent alone. He made a small shelter using branches and leaves, something to keep her off the wet ground and away from insects. He stayed nearby, speaking occasionally, keeping her calm. She could feel safety in his presence, something she had not felt since the moment they left her. When she fell asleep, it was deep and dreamless. He watched for a while, listening to the swamp, then allowed himself a moment of relief. The swamp had not claimed her, not yet. And that small fact brought hope. The following day he continued guiding her through the water and mud. He showed her how to avoid the most dangerous areas, where the ground was weakest, and where hidden channels could sweep a person away. She learned quickly, though she was still weak. Each small success gave her hope, a tiny spark that grew as they moved together. She began to talk more. She shared small pieces of herself, her family, her friends, her life before this nightmare. Each story was painful but grounding. She began to remember she had a life beyond the swamp, and she wanted to return to it. He listened without interrupting. Sometimes he offered advice, sometimes only guidance. His presence was steady, unwavering, and calm. She realized slowly that she could trust him, that he would not leave her, not like the others. They rested in hidden pockets of land during the day, avoiding direct sunlight that made movement unbearable. At night, he kept watch, listening for sounds she could not hear, reading the subtle changes in the swamp's rhythm. Each time she stirred in sleep, he was ready, his hand steady on her shoulder, ready to guide, protect, and carry her if needed. By the third day, she could walk short distances with his support. Her injuries were not healed, but they were stabilizing. Her spirit, once broken, was beginning to mend. Every small step forward was a triumph, proof that survival was possible, even in the deadliest places. They moved toward what he called the edge of the swamp, a place where the land began to rise, where water slowed, and where safety, though not guaranteed, was closer. She did not know exactly where they were going, but she trusted him implicitly. During one difficult stretch, her foot sank into a hidden mud hole. She screamed, fear and pain blending into one. He was there immediately, pulling her free, steadying her body, whispering reassurance. She realized then how fragile life had been, how close she had come to never being found. "I thought I was going to die," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You almost did," he replied, not with anger, but with calm clarity. "But you didn't. And that is what matters." By the fourth day, they reached a higher ground. The swamp was no longer an endless expanse of danger. Trees were still thick, and water still flowed, but the signs of human paths began to appear. Old footprints, remnants of previous travelers, faint traces of civilization. She felt hope stronger now, a sensation almost foreign after days of fear and pain. She was learning that she could survive with the right guidance, that even when abandoned, help could come. She was learning to believe in life again, even in the face of betrayal. By the fifth day, they were moving steadily toward the outer edge. The swamp seemed less threatening now, as if it respected her perseverance. She was still weak, but she walked with him, her steps small but determined. Each moment, each movement, was a victory over the nightmare she had endured alone. For the first time in days, she smiled. Not fully, not yet, but a small, honest expression of relief and hope. The Lakota warrior did not smile back. He did not need to. His satisfaction was quiet, seen in the way he guided her safely through every challenge, in the patience and strength he displayed, in the calm presence that kept them both moving forward. By the end of the 5th day, they reached the edge where the swamp met more solid land. Safety was near, though still not guaranteed. She looked back at the vast expanse behind her and realized how close she had come to being lost forever. She was alive because someone saw what others ignored, because someone chose to act when all others had abandoned her, because someone understood the land, understood danger, and understood the fragile strength of a human life. She would never forget him. And she would never forget the lesson of the swamp. Survival depended on courage, guidance, and trust, even when hope seemed impossible. She had never felt the weight of trust like this before. Every step she took beside him reminded her that she had survived the worst alone. Yet now survival felt different, possible, almost gentle. The swamp behind them was quiet in comparison to the day before, but it was still full of hidden dangers. Every sound made her jump. Every movement made her heart race. Yet she could move now with some confidence because he was there, guiding her through what she could not understand alone. He moved steadily, quietly through the thick water and roots. His bare feet barely made a sound as he felt each step, judging depth, softness, and the pull of the mud. Occasionally he would reach back and guide her hand, showing her where to place her foot or hold a branch for balance. At first she feared that she might collapse again, but the steady presence behind her gave her courage she had not felt in days. Pain still tore through her body with every movement. Her side ached with sharp reminders of the fall. Her legs trembled with exhaustion, and her arms felt weak from dragging herself through the swamp. Yet she kept going, because stopping meant being swallowed by fear and mud, being forgotten, and she could not let that happen. She gritted her teeth and followed, inch by inch. By the 2nd day, they reached a section of the swamp where the water ran shallower and the mud was less sticky. Here she could almost walk without his help, although she leaned on him for support. The small victories mattered. Each step forward felt like proof that she could fight, that her body could still respond, that her mind could still think clearly despite the fever, fatigue, and fear. As they moved, she began talking more. At first, it was small fragments of her life, names, places, simple stories. Then she told him about the people who had left her behind, about their betrayal. She spoke without judgment, though her voice shook and broke. She did not know why she was telling him so much, but the words were a way to unburden herself. And he listened. He did not interrupt. He did not judge. He only guided her, steady and silent, letting her words fill the space between the sounds of water and insects. At one point she paused to rest against a tree, breathing hard and trembling from exhaustion. He knelt beside her, examining her injuries carefully. He cleaned the mud from her cuts with water he collected in his hands, applying pressure to stop the bleeding, and wrapped her side in makeshift bandages. She flinched at every touch, but he worked with patience, never rushing, never letting her feel unsafe. "You're stronger than you think," he said quietly, "but you need to rest sometimes. You cannot move forward if your body breaks down." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She felt a strange mix of relief and shame. Relief that someone cared enough to help her survive. Shame that she had depended on someone so completely after being abandoned. That night, he made a small shelter out of branches and leaves, raising her off the wet ground. He kept watch while she slept, listening for any signs of danger, his eyes scanning the dark water, the shadows of the trees. She slept deeply, perhaps for the first time since she had been left, and he stayed alert, knowing that the swamp could claim a life in a single misstep. The following day they continued moving toward higher ground. Her legs still wobbled, her side still throbbed, but she could walk longer distances without needing support. She began to notice details she had ignored before, the subtle shifts in the mud, the way certain plants grew where the ground was safest, the way water moved differently near hidden channels. He taught her to read the swamp, just as he had read it himself. Each lesson strengthened her confidence. She was still fragile, still exhausted, but she was learning to survive in a place that had tried to kill her. And she was learning to trust not just him, but her own body, her own instincts. By the third day, the swamp began to show signs of its edge. The water was shallower, the trees less dense, and she could see stretches of land that seemed solid. Her hope grew, tentative but real. She began to walk more independently, though he remained close, always ready to catch her if she faltered. During a particularly difficult stretch, her foot sank into a hidden mud hole. She screamed, the sound cutting through the swamp's constant hum. He was there instantly, lifting her free, steadying her trembling body. She realized in that moment just how close she had come to being lost forever. She clung to him, tears streaming down her face, grateful beyond words for his presence.
"You will make it," he said quietly, his calm voice steadying her panic. "We are not finished yet, but you will make it." As they pressed forward, the bond between them grew stronger, unspoken but undeniable.
She no longer felt completely alone. She no longer feared the swamp the same way she had on the first night. She could focus on survival, on small victories rather than on despair. By the fourth day, they were close to the edge where the swamp met higher ground. The signs of human paths began to appear. Old footprints, faint trails, remnants of structures long abandoned. Safety was near, though still fragile. She felt a cautious optimism, knowing that danger was not entirely behind them, but that survival was possible. Her strength returned slowly, painfully, but it did return. By the fifth day, she could walk with confidence, even laugh softly when something startled her. The swamp no longer felt like an endless prison. She began to see it as a place she had survived, a place that had tested her and found her strong. As they reached the final stretch, she looked back at the swamp. The water stretched far behind her, dark and endless. She shivered, remembering the terror, the isolation, and the pain. She had survived not because of herself alone, but because someone had seen her, someone had acted, when all others had failed. She would never forget him. The Lakota warrior who had guided her, protected her, and taught her that survival was more than strength. It was guidance, trust, and courage. She would never forget the lesson of the swamp. Even in the darkest, most dangerous places, help could come if one was willing to see, willing to act, willing to care. When solid land finally appeared, she took a deep, trembling breath. She was alive, and the nightmare was behind her. The Lakota warrior stood beside her silently, watching her recover, knowing his role was done. He had given her a chance, and she had taken it. For the first time in days, she smiled fully, honestly, letting the relief wash over her. She had survived the swamp. She had survived betrayal. She had survived herself, and she knew she would carry this experience forever. Not as a story of fear alone, but as a story of survival, courage, and the quiet strength of someone who had refused to leave her behind. The first sight of solid land felt like a miracle. After days trapped in the swamp, moving slowly through mud and water, the firm ground beneath her feet made her heart soar. Her legs trembled, not only from exhaustion, but also from relief. She could finally stand without the swamp pulling her down. She could finally breathe without feeling the weight of endless danger pressing on her chest. She looked around, unsure if she had reached safety yet, but every step forward reassured her. The Lakota warrior stayed close, silent but alert. His presence had become more than guidance. It was a shield, a promise that she would not face the world alone. Not now. He never spoke more than necessary, but each word he had shared carried wisdom, calm, and reassurance. When they reached a small clearing, she finally allowed herself to look back at the swamp. It seemed to stretch endlessly, dark water weaving between thick trees, a trap disguised as nature. She remembered the terror she had felt, the isolation, the fear of being forgotten. She shivered, but this time it was not just from cold or exhaustion. It was the memory of what she had survived. "I thought I was going to die," she said quietly, her voice shaky. Her eyes filled with tears again, but these were different tears, tears of relief, gratitude, and disbelief. "You almost did," the Lakota warrior said, calm and steady. "But you didn't. That is the way of life. Sometimes the path is cruel, but it also gives chance. You have taken it." She could barely speak, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions. She wanted to ask his name, to thank him properly, to understand who he was, but the words stuck in her throat. He simply nodded once, almost as if he understood, and turned her attention forward. Civilization was near. The sounds of birds, the wind moving through trees, and the distant hum of a road filled her ears. She felt the world slowly returning, the harsh edges of the swamp giving way to familiarity. Small trails appeared, hints that other humans had passed through here. Her hope grew stronger with every step. By the next morning, they reached the outskirts of a small rural town. She could see buildings, hear voices, and feel the solid earth beneath her feet in a way she hadn't since the nightmare began. She wanted to run toward safety, but she stayed still, letting him guide her. "You will be safe here," he said. "You need help now. Others will help you where I cannot. Remember what you have learned. Remember that you survived." Emergency responders were alerted by locals who noticed her staggering into the town. She received immediate care, treated for dehydration, infections, and injuries. Nurses and doctors moved quickly, astonished at her condition, yet impressed that she had survived in the swamp for so long. She told them little, too exhausted to explain fully, but enough for them to understand that she had been left for dead. The news spread slowly, reaching authorities who began an investigation. Her story was difficult to believe at first, but evidence backed it up. Footprints, broken equipment, and remnants of the swamp confirmed her account. Those responsible for abandoning her were traced and held accountable. They could no longer hide behind lies or fear. Justice, though slow, began to take shape. Throughout her recovery, she never forgot the Lakota warrior. She wanted to find him, to express the gratitude she felt deep in her bones. She knew he would not seek recognition, would not expect thanks, but she needed him to understand that his intervention had saved her life. Every day she thought of him, of his calm, steady presence, and of the strength he had shown in the face of danger. Months passed. Her body healed, slowly regaining strength. Her mind healed too, though the memories of the swamp and betrayal remained vivid. She spoke to counselors, shared her story with friends and family, and began to rebuild her sense of trust in the world. She was cautious, wary, but stronger than she had ever known. Her experience changed her. She learned the depth of human cruelty, yes, but also the depth of human kindness. She learned that survival was not only a matter of strength or skill, it was about help, guidance, and timing. She learned that one person's courage could make the difference between life and death, and she carried that lesson forward. She became an advocate for those lost or abandoned, sharing her story to remind others that help could come when least expected, that resilience mattered, and that hope should never be given up, no matter how dark the night. Years later, she still remembered the swamp, the pain, the fear, and the moment the Lakota warrior had appeared. She remembered how calm he was, how steady, how completely devoted to keeping her alive without asking anything in return. His actions had given her a second chance, one she would never squander. Even now, she could close her eyes and feel the sensation of being carried through water, of someone strong, skilled, and silent, moving with her through danger. She would never know his name, and perhaps she never needed to. What mattered was that he existed in that moment, when she needed him most, and that his courage had matched the cruelty she had faced. Her survival became a story she told with care and purpose. Not to glorify suffering, but to highlight endurance, courage, and human kindness. She spoke of the swamp not as a place of death alone, but as a place that tested the limits of body and spirit. She spoke of the Lakota warrior not as a hero seeking recognition, but as a reminder that sometimes the world offers unexpected guidance, and sometimes the right person appears at exactly the right moment. Her life moved forward. She returned to work, to family, to friends, and to the ordinary routines that once seemed dull but now felt precious. She walked carefully in forests and near rivers, aware of danger but no longer paralyzed by fear. She carried her experience like a shadow, always present but transformed it into strength rather than despair. The swamp had tried to claim her, and nearly had. Those who abandoned her had acted with cruelty and selfishness. But one person's courage, one person's knowledge, and one person's commitment had been enough to turn the tide. She survived because she did not give up, but also because someone else did not give up on her. She often thought of him silently, wondering if he remembered her, wondering if he had returned to the forests and rivers where he belonged. She knew he probably did not seek recognition, that he likely moved through the world quietly, helping where he could, guided by principles older than words. She hoped he was well, and that he continued to bring life where danger threatened. Her story became one of survival, justice, and gratitude. She knew the swamp would remain deadly, but she had passed its test. She knew betrayal was possible, but courage existed too. And she knew that sometimes, just sometimes, the world sent to protect her, even when it seemed all hope was lost. She would never forget the feeling of being abandoned, of helplessness, and of pain. But she would also never forget the quiet strength of the Lakota warrior who found her when she was almost gone, who guided her through the swamp, and who reminded her that even in the deadliest places, life could prevail. Her story lived on not just as a memory, but as a lesson. Survival is possible, courage matters, and one person's intervention can change a life forever. Even when the world seems cruel, even when danger appears overwhelming, help can arrive. And sometimes it arrives in the form of someone who understands the land, understands danger, and understands the value of life more than anything else. She walked forward into her new life, carrying both the memory of terror and the memory of rescue. Each step was proof that she had survived. Each breath was a reminder that life, even when almost taken, could continue with meaning and purpose. And each day she honored the quiet, unseen hero who had given her the most precious gift of all, a second chance.